The Greyhound bus rattled down the worn highway, its brakes groaning as it rolled into the tiny town of Willow Creek. Evelyn May Carter pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching the familiar shapes of oak trees and weathered porches pass by. The air smelled like rain and pine needles. Home. At 18, she carried more than just a suitcase. She carried the weight of loss and the fragile hope of a fresh start. The past 4 years had been a blur of grief since the accident that took her parents, and now, stepping off the bus, she faced the town she'd left behind, unsure if it would welcome her back. Her Aunt May was waiting, hands folded in relief and worry. "Evie, you made it," she said, voice trembling. Evelyn smiled, the first genuine smile in a long time. "I'm here to stay," she said softly. In Willow Creek, time moved slower, and people remembered every story. But Evelyn needed this chance, to rebuild, to find peace, and maybe, just maybe, to find love. The old farmhouse stood weathered but strong, nestled between rolling fields that shimmered gold under the late afternoon sun. Evelyn stepped inside, the scent of aged wood and faint lavender wrapping around her like a bittersweet embrace. Aunt May bustled about, lighting candles and setting the worn kitchen table. "I've kept it just like you left it," she said softly. "Though it's been lonely without your parents, and you." Evelyn ran her fingers over the cracked windowsill, memories flooding back. The laughter of her mother calling from the garden, her father's steady footsteps on the porch. She swallowed hard, the ache of their absence raw and endless. That night, alone in the creaky bedroom, she pressed a faded photograph of her family to her chest. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees like a mournful lullaby. "I'll make you proud," she whispered to the stars, promising a future born from the ashes of loss. Summer in Willow Creek carried a slow warmth, the kind that wrapped around you like a soft blanket. At the county fair, laughter spilled into the twilight as neighbors gathered beneath strings of twinkling lights. Evelyn wandered among the booths, the scent of popcorn and caramel apples tugging at her memories of simpler times. That's when she saw him, Thomas Jameson, standing by the ring toss, his worn leather jacket catching the fading sun. There was a quiet strength in his eyes, a gentleness beneath the rough edges. He was a veteran, like her father, carrying invisible scars of a war far away. Their hands brushed when she reached for the same prize, a small stuffed bear. "Looks like we're both lucky tonight," Thomas said with a smile that softened the lines of his face. Evelyn felt a flutter she hadn't known in years, a spark of hope, a whisper of a new beginning. Maybe, just maybe, life could still surprise her. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn found herself drawn to Thomas in ways she never expected. Their conversations meandered like the river that ran through Willow Creek, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but always moving forward. One evening, they sat on the porch swing of the Jameson farmhouse, crickets humming in the warm air. Thomas pulled his old army jacket tighter around his shoulders. "The war, it doesn't leave you, Evelyn," he said quietly. "Some nights, it's louder than the world." She reached out, placing her hand over his. "You don't have to carry it alone," she whispered. For the first time since losing her parents, Evelyn felt a fragile peace bloom, a sense that kindness and understanding could heal wounds invisible to the eye. In this quiet corner of the world, they began weaving a life from hope and shared pain, learning that love could grow even in the soil of loss. Evelyn and Thomas stood beneath a blanket of stars, the summer night air thick with the scent of honeysuckle. Their wedding had been small, a simple ceremony at the old chapel, with just a few friends and family gathered, all smiles and quiet blessings. Thomas looked at Evelyn, his eyes shining with something fierce and fragile all at once. "I can't promise a perfect life," he said softly, "but I promise you'll never have to face it alone." She smiled, fingers intertwined with his. "That's all I need." The years that followed were a tapestry of laughter and struggle. Thomas returned from the war carrying invisible wounds, nights haunted by memories, days shadowed by silence. Evelyn became his anchor, her patience and love a steady light. In the kitchen, late at night, she would whisper, "We'll get through this, one day at a time." And for a while, that was enough. The farmhouse was quiet, save for the ticking of the old wall clock and the soft sobs Evelyn tried to stifle behind closed doors. Thomas sat across the room, his jaw clenched tight, eyes distant and hollow. "Tom, please," Evelyn pleaded one evening, voice trembling. "Talk to me. Let me in." But he just shook his head, the weight of battles no one could see pressing him deeper into silence. The bruises she hid beneath long sleeves were not just from falling, she knew, but from the anger war had planted in his heart. Still, Evelyn stayed, not out of fear, but because love, even battered, was all she had left. One night, as thunder rolled overhead, she whispered to the darkness, "I won't give up on you. Not yet." January's cold bit through the thin walls of the farmhouse. Evelyn was preparing dinner when a loud knock shattered the quiet. Flashing red and blue lights flooded the kitchen window. "Mrs. Carter? We need to talk," said Sheriff Barnes, his breath visible in the icy air. Confused and frightened, Evelyn watched as officers began searching the house. Questions flew, accusations of theft and fraud connected to Harold Finch's business downtown. "I swear you've got the wrong people," Evelyn said, voice shaking. "We didn't do anything." But no one listened. That night, Evelyn and Thomas were taken away in handcuffs, the town's whispers turning into cold stares. In the space of hours, their world crumbled, and an unjust nightmare began. The courtroom felt suffocating, wooden benches packed with townsfolk whose eyes carried judgment heavier than the winter air outside. Evelyn sat handcuffed, heart pounding like a wild drum. "Mrs. Carter," the prosecutor sneered, "you and your husband conspired to steal from Mr. Finch. The evidence is clear." Evelyn's lawyer was young and unprepared. Witnesses, some coerced, told twisted tales that made her out to be a calculating criminal. Thomas remained silent, his gaze distant and defeated. As the verdict came down, Evelyn's world shattered. 10 years behind bars, labeled a thief and a liar. The cruelest injustice was not just the sentence, but the community's cold turn. Neighbors who once smiled now crossed the street to avoid her. As she was led away, Evelyn whispered, "I'm innocent. I will prove it." But the road ahead was darker than she imagined. The prison walls were cold, unforgiving, and filled with echoes of lost dreams. Evelyn sat on the narrow cot in her cramped cell, clutching a faded photograph of Michael and Sarah, their faces small but vivid in her memory. Letters from her children were few, the distance between them growing like a silent chasm. She missed their birthdays, their first steps, their voices. Yet, in the darkest hours, Evelyn found strength in small acts of kindness. Teaching other inmates to read, sharing stories in the yard, these moments tethered her to hope. "I'm not just surviving," she told a fellow prisoner one afternoon. "I'm fighting. For justice. For my family." But the years stretched long and lonely. And every night she whispered to the stars, "One day I'll be free. One day they'll see the truth." Years blurred into decades. The world outside moved on. Michael grew into a man, Sarah into a woman, yet Evelyn's name remained stained by a past she never lived. She learned to live between the gray walls, carrying a heart heavy with sacrifice. "I gave everything to protect them," she thought, "even if they don't believe me." Loneliness was her constant companion. Friends faded, letters stopped, and visits became memories. But Evelyn held on, fueled by a flicker of hope. In the prison chapel, she prayed not for herself, but for her children's happiness and forgiveness. One rainy afternoon, she murmured, "If justice is blind, maybe karma isn't. One day, the truth will find its way." In a cramped office in Nashville, Clara Jensen sifted through old case files, searching for stories buried by time. When she stumbled across Evelyn's file, a woman convicted 2 decades ago under suspicious circumstances, something stirred inside her. "This isn't just another case," Clara told herself, eyes narrowing on the faded evidence. "There's more here. I can feel it." Determined, she reached out to Evelyn. Their first meeting was quiet, filled with cautious hope and guarded trust. "I won't let you down," Clara promised, shaking Evelyn's worn hand. "We're going to find the truth." Together. For the first time in 20 years, Evelyn's heart fluttered with something unfamiliar: possibility. Clara spent countless nights digging through dusty files, interviewing witnesses whose memories had faded or who were afraid to speak. The pieces didn't fit the story told 2 decades ago. There were gaps, shadows where truths should have been. One afternoon, an elderly man named Mr. Simmons, former employee of Harold Finch, hesitated before speaking. "I saw Finch's partner moving money around," he whispered, eyes darting nervously. "They wanted to pin it on the Carters to cover up their own crimes." Evelyn sat quietly, tears brimming. "So it was never us," she breathed. "We were just pawns." Clara squeezed her hand. "And now, we'll make sure the whole town knows it." With every revelation, hope grew stronger, but so did the stakes. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, cold and unyielding, as Evelyn and Clara prepared for the battle ahead. Newspapers buzzed with whispers, some sympathetic, others skeptical. Inside the courtroom, Evelyn's voice was steady but raw. "I stand here not just for myself," she said, eyes meeting those of the judge, "but for every person silenced by injustice." Clara presented new evidence: hidden ledgers, witness recantations, and a damning confession from Finch's former partner. The old prosecutor scowled, desperate to protect the town's reputation. As days dragged on, the weight of years pressed down, but Evelyn's resolve never wavered. Each testimony chipped away at the walls built by lies. Outside, a handful of townspeople began to shift, their faces softening from suspicion to remorse. The courthouse doors opened wide, and Evelyn stepped into the sunlight, free at last. Waiting there were Michael and Sarah, older, wiser, but with tears streaming down their faces. "Mom!" Michael whispered, voice cracking as he embraced her. Sarah clung to her side, trembling. "I never stopped believing you were innocent," Sarah said, her words a balm to years of pain. Evelyn held them close, feeling the years fall away like dust. "I'm so sorry for the time we lost." For the first time in decades, the fractured pieces of their family began to mend. As they walked through the familiar streets of Willow Creek, memories mingled with hope, a new chapter unfolding beneath the quiet sky. Returning to Willow Creek was like stepping into a dream edged with shadows. The streets were quieter, some storefronts shuttered, others unfamiliar. Faces she once knew now wore lines of suspicion or indifference. At the local diner, Evelyn felt the weight of stares, some curious, some cold. But a few nodded in silent acknowledgement, their eyes saying what words could not. Aunt May greeted her with tears and open arms. "You're home, Evie. And this time, you're not leaving." Evelyn's heart swelled with gratitude and sorrow. The town that had cast her out was still her home, stubbornly holding pieces of her past and her future. She vowed to rebuild not just her life, but the bonds broken by years of injustice and silence. With trembling hands and a determined heart, Evelyn opened the doors to the Willow Creek Community Center, a humble space where stories could be shared, wounds could begin to heal, and second chances were possible. Veterans gathered, their faces etched with battles both visible and hidden. Seniors seeking connection found warmth in Evelyn's presence. One afternoon, Thomas's old army buddy, Frank, approached her. "You did what most wouldn't have the strength for, Evelyn. You fought the darkness and won." Evelyn smiled through tears. It's never too late to find kindness, to forgive, to live. The center became a sanctuary, a testament to resilience, where the past was honored but did not define the future. Sitting on her porch one golden evening, Evelyn watched the sun dip below the river's edge. Her hands, now lined and worn, rested on a photo of Thomas and their children. "Life didn't turn out how I imagined," she whispered to the wind. "There was pain I couldn't have foreseen, but also moments of grace." A gentle breeze carried memories, her parents' laughter, the first spark with Thomas, the loneliness of prison, the hope that never died. "I learned that aging isn't just about losing years," she said softly. "It's about gathering wisdom, about making peace with the past, and embracing the second chances we're given." Her voice grew stronger, filled with quiet pride. To anyone listening, don't let injustice harden your heart. Let it make you fight harder, for love, for kindness, for truth. Laughter echoed through the community center as Evelyn and a group of seniors gathered around a table, sharing stories and freshly baked pies. The hardships of the past didn't vanish, but here, in these moments, they softened. Margaret, a widow with a sharp wit, nudged Evelyn playfully. "You know, Evie, you're like the heart of this place." Evelyn smiled, warmth blooming inside her chest. "We all are. We've all carried burdens, but here we carry them together." Outside, the sun cast long shadows, painting the town gold. For the first time in decades, Evelyn felt the gentle rhythm of belonging, a music that healed wounds and mended broken spirits. She thought, "This is what I fought for. This is life." One quiet evening, Evelyn found herself standing before the old courthouse steps, the place where her life had been shattered and rebuilt. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch back through time. She thought about the anger she had carried for 20 years, the bitterness that had almost consumed her. But now, standing there, she understood something deeper. "Forgiveness isn't for them," she whispered to the wind. "It's for me. To set my heart free." She thought of Thomas, of her children, of Aunt May, and even the people who had turned their backs on her. Her voice grew steady, filled with grace. "Justice is more than a verdict. It's kindness, sacrifice, and the courage to keep moving forward." And with that, she let go, not of the pain, but of the power it held over her. Years later, the town of Willow Creek had changed, and so had Evelyn. She sat on the porch of the farmhouse, now blooming with wildflowers, the sun warm on her face. Children's laughter drifted from the community center, veterans and seniors sharing stories and smiles. Evelyn's journey from heartbreak to healing had become a beacon for many. Her voice, calm and steady, spoke to all who would listen. "Life will test you, sometimes unfairly, cruelly. But within every shadow, there is light. Every sacrifice plants a seed. Every act of kindness echoes beyond what we can see. If my story teaches you anything, let it be this: never give up. Fight for truth, hold on to love, and remember, the deepest wounds can lead to the greatest strength. In the end, justice isn't just about the law. It's about the heart." As the sun set, Evelyn smiled, knowing her story was more than her own. It was a legacy of hope, courage, and second chances.